Hello and welcome back to International Corner. We got lots to talk about, of course. The double-header against Feyenoord and making it through to the quarterfinals. And then, of course, the match ahead against Atalanta. I'm joined here by Richard Hall as usual. Hello, Richard. How are you?
I'm really well, really well. It's all good in into corner, isn't it? Really, because that result against Feyenoord worked out for us, and yeah, it's just good to be back talking to you as well, Anna.
Yeah, it's been a while, and in this little while, of course, a lot went on. And if we started talking about the match against Feyenoord in the round of 16 of the UCL, of course, something that went in our favor despite the fact that there were a lot of players injured. I mean, our wing-back situation was not favorable, and even though we had the 2-goal advantage from the first leg, you can't take anything from granted. I mean, think about the fact that, of course, we were coming from the match against Monza. That is a match that, of course, we were expecting to, I'm not saying taking it easy, having it easy, because, of course, Monza, bottom of the class, they haven't won a match forever. So we were expecting to, I'm not saying having it easy, but not to struggle the way we did. It was an amazing comeback, I must say, in that game. And then, of course, having to put our head down straight to Feyenoord wasn't that easy because, like I said, there was plenty of injuries. What do you think about the way we coped with those two fixtures?
Yeah, we go back over it. I mean, I remember messaging you, I think, after the Monza game, and yeah, my heart rate wasn't great on that one. But look, at the end of the day, we produced what we need to do to win the Scudetto. At the end of the day. I think that realistically, when you look at Inter, and we've said this many, many times before about the rotation, about the fact that there are 23, 24, 25 players ready to play at any one point. I think that was really proven now. We're getting to the real depths of the season, the real, the earth of it, for want of a better word. And we're showing that we've got enough. And in Simone Inzaghi said that we're not competing on 3 fronts, we're competing on 4 fronts. And I believe the squad. I believed in the squad. I believed we've got the squad to do that. And Feyenoord have been disposed of. It was a very good result. I think when you look at it, even to the players like I want to talk really to you as well about Josep Martinez as well. Shows just every single part of the team. We've spoken about this on the International Corner all season, and it's repetitive, I know. but how many times can we regurgitate players and have different players? Everyone, I wasn't particularly happy in the first start of the season when we were winning 1-0, and I thought, is Simone Inzaghi playing a dangerous game? No, he's not. He's done it brilliantly, and we've got the squad now that's got every single player ready to go, and I think we're seeing it.
That's true. I mean, with Sommer's injury, of course, Josep Martinez had to step up, and he did it in the Coppa Italia against Lazio. And he had, he said back then that he was kind of ready, was expecting to get in the call for that game, and we saw him, doing his duty and playing his part and being ready when he had to. And that goes as well for players like Bastoni, who had to change position a little bit in that latest game against Monza as well. What do you think about that shift in position over the pitch, considering the injuries we had with Di Marco, Carlos Augusto being back just now?
Yeah, I think one of the things that, and I don't mean to be disparaging about the British media, but I think when the British media start talking tactically about Inter, there's something as good has happened. Bastoni's moving position was heavily rated in the UK media. And I think that was really important. I think that obviously you can see that the fact of Inter have had to have that transition. And I think that what Inzaghi's doing at the moment is when we, again, I hate to keep using the word transition, but it is that ability that he's redefining in a weird way what the back three have to do and the wing backs do. He's been very, very good with that. And I think also going back to Josep Martinez as well, look at the way that he played out from the back And if you go right back to one of the biggest games and of the season, randomly, when Inter played Manchester City not so long ago, the English media were talking about the way they played out from the back. I think when you look at the fact that we've got so many different players now having to come and integrate, and yet they're still doing it, and they're still playing in the same manner. I think they do themselves a lot of credit. So for me personally, I mean, we've talked about the Coppa Italia, we've talked about the Champions League, we've talked about the Scudetto already. I think Inter have, potentially got a long way to go, and it would be tragic if we didn't win silverware this season.
Before we get into the next stage of the long way ahead of us, I just wanted to say that Inzaghi reached the 200 appearances, matches with Inter with the game against Feyenoord, which of course is a milestone. He's the fifth coach to have reached that milestone for 200 games with Inter in all competitions since 1929-1930. After Elenio Herrera, he had 368 games, and Roberto Mancini with 303, and Giovanni Trapattoni with 233, and Eugenio Bersellini at 207. And milestone after milestone, who knows where we could go. And of course, we played on a Tuesday night, and then on Wednesday other things happened. Unbelievable things happened, and we obviously we already knew who we're going to be facing. We're facing, of course, Bayern Munich in not a long time, because we're going to be playing against them in Germany on the 8th of April and then back at San Siro on the 16th of April. And there are a lot of games in between that, starting, of course, with Atalanta, and then we got Udinese, and the Coppa Italia double header with the derby. It's a lot. Anyway, and then of course there's the international break coming up next week, where a lot of the players from the Italian delegation will actually face Germany for the Nations League. But what I wanted to say to you, the real question is Bayern Munich. Okay, out of all the teams possible this year with the new Champions League format, where of course we've seen teams of the likes of PSG, not sure if they're going to make it or not. Big teams that were knocked out, and then of course the upset with Liverpool in the end. Do you think that Bayern Munich in the end was a team that we got lucky, or sooner or later we were supposed to face, or not?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because, I mean, Bayern Munich 2010 just brings it all back. But I think that one of the things I think when we've got to look at the moment is, you mentioned before about Simone Inzaghi, and when you mentioned some of the other coaches, I mean, I'm big Inter historian, and Helenio Herrera, and the Grande Inter was a huge, huge team. But if you look at what it was built on, it was built on a very capable backline. You talk about Trapattoni as well. That team's my personal favourite team, of course, which with Mateus and Klinsmann, Berti, Ferry, Zenga, all of those boys, built on a very, very, very good back line. When we win the treble, again, built on a back line. I think what we have at the moment is the same thing. When you look at Bayern, you look at those games against Leverkusen, you look at the games they've had recently, and, from an English perspective, Harry Kane's doing an incredible job for them, but I don't think overall they are the best Bayern team you can get at the moment. I don't think it's the worst situation for Inter to have. I think the history, of course, people like you and I will talk about the history of those games, and rightly so, because we've had some really special games against them. But realistically, I think that this Bayern's beatable. And yeah, I mean, look, when you look at the Champions League as a whole, I find it bizarre that, and again, I'm talking US and English media here, how little Inter are being classed as favourites. Because I know I'm biased, of course, but I also look at it and I think, well, people talk about Barcelona a little bit, people talk about Bayern, but no one's really including Inter in this. And if I'm correct, I mean, you're a good statistician, Eleanor. It's our second goal we conceded against Feyenoord. Am I not correct?
Exactly, yes. But also, if you look at it on another perspective, you win okay, it's okay. Our defense was astounding with conceding only one goals before the final game. But you've got to score goals in order to win games. So and then of course it's different matches. It's a different kind of pressure that you've put on yourself when it comes to the Champions League with this all in, all out type of games. I mean, think about what happened to Atletico Madrid the other night. I mean, you've got to see it that way as well, where in a whole wider perspective, not just numbers, but I think that Inter did well. I mean, there is this thing that the media have been talking about where Inter have put on a stronger, more aggressive mentality in the UCL rather than the league. We don't necessarily agree with that, but it is true that in the Champions League, Inter have outperformed themselves at times. And I'm thinking about games against Man City, Arsenal, where you expect maybe, you don't necessarily expect to do as well as we did. Their mentality was bang on from the very first minute. And then in the league, of course, maybe because you're more fatigued, because we had big UCL, big games. And then after that, we had big clashes as well in the Serie A. Then it all comes together and it all has an effect and an impact in the end. And maybe what suffered a little bit more in terms of conceding goals, etc., was the Serie A, was the league rather than the UCL. But yeah, I don't know. It's so unpredictable to be honest. I mean, yeah, like I said, having seen the game the other night, the Spanish derby, the Madrid derby, it was pretty bizarre not to think this could have happened. So I'm not saying who's favorite or not. What I can tell you is that, like you said, the match playing against Bayern Munich brings up a lot of memories. One, of course, is the 2010 memory of when we won it all. What are your memories of that year, actually, not just winning the Champions League and the other two trophies?
Lots of crying. Honestly, I know it sounds stupid, but the Siena game with Milito, that was the moment for me personally. I spent a lot of time, as you know, in Milan around that time before children, and I was out there quite a lot. And obviously, Siena was a huge game. But then it was one of those moments where you don't think things are possible, and I resonate really as an Inter fan more than anything, because thinking this is groundbreaking in the sense of where we were at the time. Because if you remember, of course, I mean, 4 years before, Italian football wasn't, when I first really was, 2006, really going out and in Mancini's era and spending a lot of time in Milan, Italian football was on its how do you put it in English, backside, for want of a better word, and where Inter got to at that point was phenomenal. It was immense. And I just remember, do you know one of the big things I remember about that? The second game, I think it was, my memory might be going here, but it was the second game, and it was when Schneider was bought. I think it was against, did we draw 1-1 against Bari early doors?
But you're going to, it's too far.
Yeah. So my mind's working.
Don't go that deep.
And Schneider came in early on in the season, changed everything. And then the 4-0 win against in the Derby della Madonnina. And then, I mean, that season was special. So, yeah, it was, Bayern brings back a lot of memories is what I'll probably answer to you. And, it was, we deserved to win on that day. And I think we've got a decent enough team to beat them this time as well.
Yeah, in total, against Bayern, we won it 3 times. 5 wins for Bayern instead, and 1 draw. 9 goals in total by Inter and 13 for Bayern Munich. The last time we faced Bayern Munich, do you remember it? Or shall I refresh your memory?
No, I think you're going to have to do that one. I mean, my memory goes back a long way, but probably
the recent short memory is gone already. So it was on the 7th September of 2022. I was in the group of the UCL. 2 legs encounter, and luckily we lost both games. And there is one current player for Inter that scored against us. Do you remember who it was?
Oh, come on, now you don't. Did you not allowed to put me on the
Come
spot on
on,
this? Are
a player that played for Bayern Munich and won everything you could possibly win. French man Benjamin Pavard.
you?
That obviously, I think this is a sort of cosmic that he scored in that game, and yet he has to score for us. And I think if he can, that's his game. You know, when we play Bayern Munich, if he's on the starting 11, if he comes on, and he's so keen of scoring a goal
Yeah.
for us, and of course that could be his time. And of course, Benjamin Pavard didn't just play at Bayern Munich, but he won the famous sextuple. That sounds like a bad word that you find
It
online.
does in English.
Is that how you pronounce? Is that how you pronounce it? Actually,
Sounds like a party I'm not allowed to go to anymore. Yeah. Listen, let's not go there. Yeah, but
so
listen, Pavard, I think he's such a cultured player. I think when sometimes when I say about I've used this term before, and I really mean this when I call I always call Jan Sommer the Federer of goalkeepers because he's class and just the way he operates. I think Pavard's in that same sort of stratosphere. And he's incredible. So I think, listen, anyone who's played for Inter and has a chance, of course, to play for Bayern as well, you don't get a better grounding than that as a player. So
yeah.
talking about winners,
So
I mean, you look at
we need to clarify though what that sextuple meant. Otherwise, people are going to be left. What these two talking about? It means from the number 6, so he won 6 trophies. But Bayern Munich, I'm gonna list them all. Of course, he won the Bundesliga, the DFB Pokal, which is the Coppa Italia, the Champions League, the DFL Super Cup, the UEFA Super Cup, and of course the FIFA Club World Cup, which we will be playing this year in the summer, starting in June. Benjamin Pavard, in that year when he scored that goal, 2022-2023, we were defeated by Bayern Munich, but we ended up going all the way down to the final against Man City in Istanbul. So I think I'm looking at these cosmic points, and I think that if Pavard scores a goal against Bayern Munich, we might, I'm calling it.
It's definitely possible. It's definitely possible. Listen, we can, still, like I said before, we can still win 4 trophies. So, it's Pavard's got history, let's say, with these sort of things.
Yeah, and also now our side of the UCL table, where we are taking on Bayern Munich for a spot in the semi-final, and Borussia Dortmund are instead fighting it out against Barcelona. On the other side, of course, we have Paris Saint-Germain, who defeated Liverpool and are going through to have a place in the semi-final against Aston Villa. And Arsenal will take on Real Madrid. Who do you think out of the other side of the table could we be facing if, of course, we do our job? Out of Paris Saint-Germain, Aston Villa, Arsenal, Real Madrid.
I think when you look at this, well, there's two teams that really, it's really hard because I don't know if this is a thing in Italy, but people always talk, and normally it would be about Liverpool as well, but Real Madrid just always do well in that competition.
Yeah, of course.
It's like it's their competition. It's a weird thing to say because it makes no statistical sense. But I definitely think so. I think Arsenal would want to, with Odegaard as well, I think they'd want to watch a little bit because I think that they're so there's such a thing in the UK at the moment about them being the nearly men. They could certainly do something. I think when you look at them defensively and when you look at them in the midfield as well, I do think they obviously like a striker and they do struggle a little bit, but I think when they've got a full contingent, they're quite dangerous as well. Probably a bit more underrated, but I honestly think, and I'm not just saying this. I mean, I have been critical of Inter in the past when I've needed to be, but I actually think we've got a really good chance this year. When I look at the teams you mentioned there, you look at Real Madrid and you think, okay, Vinny Jr. of course is amazing, and you look at the squad, but I don't think defensively. I think there was more questions than answers against Atleti. You look at the likes of Aston Villa, it's unlikely. You look at Arsenal, they've not got forward. I think Inter have everything in that sense.
No,
And
but I wasn't talking about who we've got a chance against. Is who do you think will make it through in the quarterfinals, and eventually, if we do make it through as well, who we're gonna face? I'm not trying to speculate who we can beat or not, because like I said, for us, it's we live it in a different way from Italy. I think the Champions League, it's a whole. It puts you on this different perspective. I mean, maybe the Premier League is perceived in a different way compared to the Serie A, but I think that, it's such a big spectacle that it does get something extra out of you,
I think Real Madrid, I think it's always got to, I don't think you can look at the Champions League and not worry about Real Madrid, because they're always going to be there and thereabouts. I mean, for me, when you look at the squad, the expectation, it's just that ability to turn up and think we're Real Madrid, and they have that history. In England, sometimes people talk about Liverpool, like as you said to you, like that as well. But I think that Real Madrid have that persona, that way of thinking, and like, even though it doesn't make a lot of sense, it weirdly works, doesn't it? Because those two teams will always be there and thereabouts. So I think when you look at where you're going to be,
but I don't know. Like I said, I'm a big fan of course, Cholo Simeone. We all are, and the kind of personality and what he brings to the table. Of course, having been here as well, and I think that there was a plenty of character against Real Madrid the other night, and. It wasn't, you say, Real Madrid are favourites and they always find a way through. And just saved by the bell, literally,
Oh, yeah.
If I can use an English phrase to say. But anyway, I think it's a universal rule that they're very, high pressure games for all of us, whether you're Real Madrid or Club Bruges, who knocked out Atalanta, the next team we're going to be talking about. But one thing to say is that, of course, 2010 is the one encounter against Bayern Munich we all remember of with great pleasure. And I think that, plays a big part as well, when the players, the coaches, the club, everyone steps onto that pitch and thinks of what happened, and the history behind these two clubs and that fixture.
What's your thoughts? I've not asked you actually about, with the Champions League, who would you want to be steering away from? If I return the question to you.
Of course, Real Madrid. Of course, Real Madrid, because like you said, it's true that they have the favorites. They have the history of winning so many, and we know how many, and that. But like I said, this year the journey through the competition has been so long for every team, because like I said, with the new format there were a lot more encounters. A lot of teams had to take risks, and a lot of big teams have been knocked out in the early stages, or they had to fight to stay in the competition. And then of course you have to put into perspective the fact that this summer there's going to be the Club World Cup. And, the players are starting to think, there's a lot on our plate mentally. There's so many games, so many fixtures. Inter, for example, we're still in all the competitions. Of course, Serie A, the Coppa Italia. Then we play the Super Cup. And then, of course, the Champions League. So it's really hard to say. There's so many variables to take into account that I think it's, besides the fact that Real Madrid won it a lot, I would say, Real Madrid.
Can I ask you a question really quickly?
I'd rather not be Aston Villa. If we get... No, I don't know why. It's some memories I get from university.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. Let me ask you a quick question. So, when you talk about the Club World Cup, in Italy, how big? Because we are the international corner at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So we're talking to an international audience, and in England, it's really funny because that Continental World Cup, as we used to call it back in the day, doesn't really resonate in the UK.
But this year is going to be massive. It's going to be
Will it
massive.
resonate in Italy?
This year is going to be massive, I think, because there's a lot of big teams. There's going to be a lot of activities. It's going to be so long. A lot of teams as well taking part of teams that you otherwise will never face each other ever. So I mean, think about former players that now are making all their way back to their former clubs and have a chance to see it out with the current player that never in the world they would have never stepped foot on the same pitch ever again. So I think that's the way you've got to look at it, and I think it's going to be a competition that we're all going to be following, despite of course the time difference and everything is going to be huge, I think.
No, massively. I mean, I remember I've always been a big follower of it. I remember Liverpool playing Flamengo in '85, so I'm going really back. But so it's always been a big thing. But in the UK, weirdly, it's never seen as a huge competition. But it's interesting to understand that in Italy, it's still seen as huge. And
you have to think about all the former players that are now playing in America, of course, and we might have the chance to play against them. So I think that's the way to look at it. And of course, in the US, everything gets pushed way beyond expectations in terms of show, in terms of media, in terms of entertainment. So I think that's the way you've got to look at it. Speaking of entertainment, we have got a big game coming up, and I want to focus on that. On Sunday, Inter will face Atalanta. Only 3 points separate the two sides, and I think that's a pretty short margin in a very balanced league this year. Of course, the table sees Inter leading, then Napoli and Atalanta. An Atalanta that we faced early on in the season on match day 3, and it was back in August when things were not had not picked up at all with, first of all, the transfer window hadn't closed yet. And then we had the situation with a lot of players being away. For example, Lautaro had been away with the Copa America, so it missed a lot of the training part, the pre-preparation of the season. That match, however, that turned in our favour because we took a massive win, a 4-0 win that time. Because, of course, Atalanta as well had a totally reshaped and reshaping so it was a work in progress type of team. So it turned in our favour, and the Atalanta we're going to see on Sunday is going to be completely different, even different from the Atalanta we met in the semi-final of the Super Cup. Don't you agree?
Yeah, massively. I think I think this game, without going too over the top, I think it shapes our season. I really do, because you saw what Atalanta did last time out, and they're dangerous. They are really dangerous, and they always are. It's you look at the likes of Tegui. For me personally, was brilliant. I think when you look, I was talking the other day on the radio and talking about Lookman and talking about the fact of his resilience to come back after the criticism, after the penalty situation, and just to be on that level is really, really good. I think it's really impressive. I've always got a lot of time for Atalanta. I think the one thing that scares me always about Atalanta is one thing. I think that I actually take pride in what Inter do, in the sense of I think we can replace players left back, right back, as we've seen, centre midfield, centre forward, and we can still have a squad that looks dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
They're the only other team in Serie A who can do that.
They are,
and that worries me.
We are actually, Atalanta and us and Inter are the two teams that scored the most. So we are the best attacking sides with 63 goals each, which is a lot. Of course, they have Retegui being the top scorer for the club and also in the Serie A. And Atalanta, I mean, like I was saying, from that match day 3 back in August, then they've made a huge progression, of course, because they came all the way up. They had from match day 7, so not that long after that, they picked up 11 wins in a row in the league. And I think that the only upset for them, only, if you want to say only, was, of course, being knocked out from the Champions League by Club Brugge. That was the only upset. And okay, the Super Cup, we defeated them. But that of course, probably was, again, a period in the way of many things for them. You have got to look at the fact that we have such a huge squad, with
Yeah.
3 players per role. Whereas for them, maybe that's not given. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the thing is with Atalanta is that you just don't. They're never a good team to play because, like you say, yes, they had the situation with Club Brugge and Club Brugge, and we can understand that. But I think the one thing is they under Gasperini they consistently play good football, and they are dangerous up front. I mean, we just talked about Ortega, we talked about Lookman. You can go through this Darun. You can talk about all the different players there who will threaten you. So we know that game's not going to be a pass. It won't be easy. Which is why I go back to the point I said before, and I think that if Inter can get a result here, a positive result, then when you look at the fixtures moving forward to the rest of the season, it really puts us in a good stage. And I'm confident for one reason, in the sense of we have got that rotation, and we do have that.
It's true. We do have that rotation, and that's probably been our biggest weapon this season. Because of course, injuries do happen with so many games, and Inzaghi was right in thinking I've got to have a game plan, game by game, taking it match by match, but of course have to have a plan B for every possible situation. I'm going to go back to 2010 for 1 second. A crucial game we played against Atalanta. Do you remember Kivu when he played that game, and not that long after his head injury, and was probably one of the first games after that injury, scored a huge goal in a match that was crucial for overtaking Roma that season. Do you remember?
I do actually, yeah. And Kivu, of course, ex-Roma player as well.
Yeah.
He was fantastic.
And I'm mentioning Kivu because, of course, now he, from being our under-20 coach, you remember, last season, is now the coach of Parma. So we will be seeing his face not longer after all these fixtures that we've got. On match day 31, we'll face Parma away, and we'll see how Kivu does as his first time as a coach in a professional team. So, what do you think about that?
I think it's great to see. I think when you look back at over previous players, I always think it's nice to see that you can see some of the. If you look at the way Kivu's starting to set up his teams, there is obviously. He wants to work with full backs, but he's also defensively strong, and you can see a lot of, it's almost like into history through other teams. So I always like it when I see, ex-players, obviously in those roles. And yeah, we've got quite a few, because if you think about it, back in, like you said, about 2010, there was a lot of leaders in that team. You don't think about it now, but realistically, when you go through it, it was an incredible squad that won that treble. They're all of a similar age as well, and it's good. It's good to see them doing different things now. But yeah, they're all well deserved, should we say? Even from Zanetti to Kivu.
From Zanetti to Kivu through Pavard, I would say, because I called that his name today. That's all the time we've got for today, and of course, I'd like you to watch with us the game against Atalanta on Sunday. Rich, it's been a pleasure having you here with us again today.
I absolutely always a privilege to be here with you, and thanks again. It's always good to talk about Inter.
Thank you. Bye bye.